Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
She didn't even look up when she said it. Just scrolled on her phone, lips pursed like she was reading something mildly irritating, then dropped the line without ceremony. You're one mistake away from being alone. I didn't react. Not the way she probably expected. I just looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I once chased through bookstores and midnight diners, who used to run into my arms like it was the safest place on earth. That woman wasn't in the room anymore. What sat across from me now was someone else entirely. I got up, walked to the hallway closet, opened the door where we kept old storage bins and unused picture frames. There, behind a stack of winter scarves, was a small hand mirror she used to keep in her purse. I brought it back, held it out, and when she finally glanced up, I set it gently on the table in front of her. Then take a good look at the reason. Her eyebrows lifted like I'd told a joke that fell flat. She let out a short, humorless laugh and looked back at her phone. The thing about reaching your breaking point is, you usually don't see it coming. There's no surprising thunderclap or voice in your head screaming, "This is it." Sometimes it's just a sentence, a tone, a moment so small, so still, you almost miss it. I stood there, hands by my sides, wondering how many of those moments I'd already lived through without realizing they were warning signs. This wasn't the first jab, not by a long shot. It was just the first time I didn't flinch. She kept scrolling, pretending the mirror meant nothing. But I saw the shift, the way her eyes hovered over it before snapping back to her screen, how her fingers stalled for just a second. I wasn't watching for a reaction. I was done pretending like everything was okay. We'd been in this quiet war for a while. No name calling, just this constant undercurrent of contempt. Everything I said annoyed her. Everything I didn't say was seen as avoidance. If I made plans, I was controlling. If I waited for her to suggest something, I was indifferent. And I hadn't made a scene. Not once. That wasn't my way. I was the calm one. The one who still asked how her day was, who brought her coffee without being asked, who remembered the names of coworkers she never talked about anymore. I did it because that's who I was. But you can only stretch yourself so thin before you stop recognizing your own reflection. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the couch alone. No TV. No music. Just silence. The mirror was still on the table where I left it, catching a bit of moonlight through the blinds. I didn't move it. Let it sit there like a witness. I thought about the last year, how intimacy became something she rationed like a favor, how "I'm just tired" went from once in a while to every night, how she went from curling up next to me in bed to sleeping with her back to me, phone glowing under the covers, fingers tapping out messages she'd never talk about. When did I stop being someone she wanted and start becoming someone she tolerated? I wasn't perfect. No one is. I could be quiet when I should have spoken up. I missed a couple of anniversaries early on because of work, and yeah, there were days I was distracted, caught in the grind of just trying to keep things stable. But I never stopped showing up, even when she didn't notice, even when she barely looked at me anymore. That's the part that eats at you, not the absence of passion, but the absence of basic care. Like you're just a background character in the life of the person you thought you'd grow old with. The house still smelled like the dinner I had cooked. She hadn't touched it. Said she already ate with coworkers. Funny how that used to bother me, imagining her laughing with someone else over wine while I waited at home, the meal growing cold. But now? Now it just felt predictable. That sentence, "You're one mistake away from being alone," wasn't a warning. It was a test. A line people throw out when they assume they're holding all the cards. Like they're daring you to do something about it, betting you won't. She was sure I wouldn't. She was wrong. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of heartbreak, just clarity. I saw the shape of things. The way she took and took, always positioning herself as the one settling. She thought I was just lucky to have her. That I should be grateful she hadn't walked out already. But the truth? She'd already left. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. And I had stayed, hoping that maybe things would click back into place. They wouldn't. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of her white noise machine through the wall. She said she needed it to sleep now. I used to be the one who helped her sleep, just being beside her. Funny how even peace had to come from something plugged in now. I closed my eyes and let a single thought settle in. I was one decision away from being free. And I was almost there. It didn't start with her pulling away. That came later. First, it was small choices, micro decisions that added up in ways I didn't recognize until they were already routine. Like how she stopped asking if I'd eaten before grabbing takeout for herself. Or how she started locking her phone when she used to leave it face up on the nightstand. Nothing loud. Nothing obviously cruel. I tried not to overthink it. Everyone goes through slumps. We'd had our rough patches before, months where we felt like roommates instead of partners, but this felt different. Back then, there was still an effort. She'd leave me notes on the fridge. I'd surprise her with lunch at work. We still acted like we mattered to each other. Lately, all I got was convenience. If it wasn't useful to her, it didn't exist. I remember one Friday when I suggested we drive out to the lake like we used to. A quiet weekend. Just the two of us, away from her emails and my calendar. That sounds exhausting, she muttered. Can we just do nothing for once? She wasn't tired. Because the next night, she was out with her friends until nearly 1 a.m., posting pictures of cocktails and rooftop views. Full face of makeup. The dress she always said she wore for me, except now, it was never for me. I didn't say anything. Maybe part of me still hoped it was a phase. That work stress or age or routine was wearing us down. That we'd find our way back. But hope turns sour when it starts feeling like self-delusion. The following week, one of our mutual friends dropped by for a quick visit. We were catching up in the kitchen when he asked casually, "Hey, wasn't your wife out with some guy from her office last Friday? I think I saw them at the Thai place downtown." I blinked. No, she said she was at Mia's place. He raised an eyebrow. Could have sworn it was her. She was laughing about something, leaning in real close to him. I shrugged it off like it didn't matter, but inside something twisted. I'd stopped questioning her schedule months ago. She always had a slick answer, and I always chose peace over conflict. But now the timeline didn't add up, and her lie wasn't even careful. That night, I stayed in the living room long after she went to bed, because I didn't want to be near her. For the first time, my own house felt foreign, like a place I was just visiting. What would I even say? I'd get the same tired response, "You're being paranoid," or "It's not what you think." Maybe even that patronizing half-smile she used when she thought I was being surprising. I wasn't in the mood to be gaslit. I wanted honesty, and that was something she didn't trade in anymore. Even her affection had terms. She could laugh with her coworkers, joke around with baristas, compliment strangers, but I got shoulder shrugs and distracted nods. If I tried to hug her, she'd stiffen. If I asked for time together, she'd sigh like I was interrupting something. There was a point where I started watching her the way you study someone who's already half gone. I noticed how she only wore perfume when she left the house. Never when we were home. How she bought new lingerie but left it buried under old clothes and drawers she never used. She didn't realize I noticed. But I did. And the noticing chipped away at any illusions I had left. I remember once walking past the bathroom door when she was getting ready to go out. The smell of her perfume hit me, something floral and sharp, the kind that lingered long after she left. I paused, waiting to see if she'd say anything. She caught my eye in the mirror and smiled briefly, like I was a stranger she didn't mind being polite to. "You're going somewhere?" I asked. "Just dinner with Jenna." "Isn't Jenna in Chicago this week?" There was a beat. A pause too long. "Oh, right. No, I meant Carla." And just like that, she went back to applying her lipstick. It didn't matter who she was really meeting. What mattered was that she didn't even try to make the lie believable. She was right. At least, back then. But there's a difference between silence and stupidity. I wasn't blind. I was just tired. Tired of trying to fix what she kept breaking. Tired of pouring into a relationship that had turned into a waiting room where I sat hoping she'd come back from wherever she'd gone emotionally. And now, seeing the full picture, I knew she wasn't coming back. Because she didn't want to. The tipping point wasn't surprising. It never is. It's not the screaming match or the final insult. It's the quiet realization that the person you love isn't even pretending to love you anymore. After she left that night, I stayed at the kitchen table staring at her half-empty wine glass. The lipstick stain on the rim made me nauseous. It was a detail that used to make me smile, proof she'd been there, something intimate and real. Now, it looked like a red flag in glass form. She came home late. I pretended to be asleep. In the darkness, I replayed the night from beginning to end. Her lie. The way she looked at her reflection more than at me. The man from the restaurant. Her fading affection. My constant effort. And then the sentence again. "You're one mistake away from being alone." She meant it as a threat. But she had it backwards. She already made the mistake. And I was just about ready to be alone. It's strange how quiet the house feels when you stop trying. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. This one hums with distance. You start to notice the way chairs aren't pushed in. Dishes pile up slightly longer. Text messages go unanswered without tension. The kind of quiet where both people are present, but no one's really there. That's how we existed, day after day. She didn't notice the shift in me. I stopped asking where she was going. I no longer offered to carry her bags, fix the leaky faucet, or check her tires before she left for another unexplained outing. What used to be habits of love became dead weight I refused to carry. At first, she seemed relieved. I think she mistook my silence for surrender, like I'd finally accepted my role in her life as the background noise she could ignore. She grew bolder, more careless. She didn't bother lying as often, just vague responses and sarcastic smiles. Going out again? I'd ask, just to hear her say it. She'd barely look up. Yeah. Is that a problem? No. And it wasn't. Not anymore. One evening, we sat at opposite ends of the couch. The glow of the TV flickered across her face, but she was too busy scrolling through her phone to watch. I glanced at her, not with longing or anger, just curiosity, wondering how someone who once used to cling to my arm in movie theaters, who whispered dreams into my ear at 3 a.m., could now act like a roommate who happened to dislike me. Her laughter used to be my favorite sound. Now it came in bursts when she texted people I'd never met. She spent more time in the guest bathroom now. Took her phone with her, like it was an extension of her body. If she left it behind even once, I'd glance at the screen. Nothing invasive, just a glance. One night, I caught a name I didn't recognize paired with a heart emoji in a message preview. It confirmed what I already knew. You don't need physical proof when indifference is the clearest sign of betrayal. Some nights, she wouldn't come home until after midnight. When she did, she'd slide into bed without a word. No explanation. Sometimes she'd be wearing makeup, sometimes not. Sometimes she smelled like a mix of perfume and whiskey, other times like someone else's cologne she didn't bother washing off. I stopped turning over when I heard the door. I just lay still, eyes wide, letting the ceiling keep me company. She started getting irritated more easily, as if my silence was somehow louder than words. One morning, while she stood by the sink fixing her hair, she caught me looking at her. What? She snapped. Nothing, I said calmly. Just wondering how long you'll keep pretending. She turned to face me, jaw tightening. Pretending what? That this isn't already over. She didn't respond. Just grabbed her purse and left without breakfast. From that point on, the tension shifted. She wasn't so smug anymore. Her jabs turned sharper, more reactive. Like she could sense something slipping. One night, as I stood by the kitchen counter rinsing a dish, she looked up from her phone and said, I don't know what's going on with you lately, but you've been acting weird. I dried my hands, leaned against the sink. I'm just matching your energy. Her eyes narrowed. Don't start being petty now. Not being petty. Just finally paying attention. That conversation ended with her slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stayed in the living room, not hurt, just oddly calm. Like I'd reached the bottom of something and realized there was nothing left to dig through. She spent the next few days alternating between silence and spite. The cold shoulder when I made coffee. Sarcastic remarks when I asked anything remotely personal. She picked fights over things that had never mattered before, how I folded laundry, what shows I watched, even how I loaded the dishwasher. But beneath it, I could see it, the flicker of panic. She had always controlled the rhythm. Decided when we spoke, how we connected, what was off limits. But now, I wasn't responding the way she wanted. I was just there. Present, polite, disengaged. And it drove her mad. One night over dinner, barely a shared plate of pasta and 2 glasses of wine she poured more for aesthetics than enjoyment, she threw her fork down mid-meal and said, Are you even attracted to me anymore? I looked at her, truly looked, and answered honestly. That's not the issue. She blinked, like she didn't expect honesty. Then what is? She asked, voice suddenly softer. Defensive. You don't see me, I said. Not really. And I'm tired of trying to be visible. She laughed, but it was brittle. So now I'm the villain because I've had a hard year? No, I replied. You're the villain because you stopped trying and expected me to keep pretending that was okay. She didn't touch her food after that. Later that night, as we lay in bed facing opposite directions, I realized I didn't hate her. What I felt was worse, nothing. The space she used to fill was empty now, and I no longer felt the need to reach for it. I thought about how far we drifted, how I had begged for scraps of affection while she threw her energy into everyone but me, how my needs became burdens, my presence something she endured. And then, I remembered her words. You're one mistake away from being alone. She still thought she had the upper hand. Still believed I needed her more than she needed me. But she hadn't noticed I was already gone in every way that mattered. It didn't happen all at once. There was no surprising overnight transformation or singular burst of rage that sent me packing. What unfolded was deliberate, quiet, like setting a series of dominoes and watching each one fall in slow motion. The next morning, While she slept in, I sat at the edge of the bed and made a mental inventory not of things, but of patterns. My routine had revolved around her comfort for too long. I cooked, cleaned, managed bills, and adjusted my life to match her whims. I had made excuses for her coldness, absorbed her indifference like it was seasonal weather. But now, I was seeing it differently. Her disrespect wasn't accidental. It was practiced. She knew exactly how little she gave and how much I tolerated. So, I stopped tolerating. The first thing I did was simple. I opened a new bank account in my name only, transferred my direct deposit, separated my money from hers with the same detachment you'd use when switching utility providers. No announcement, just a clean shift. Next came the paperwork. I met with an attorney during my lunch break one Tuesday. I sat across from a man in a blue tie who barely blinked when I said I wanted everything ready before the end of the month. He asked a few questions, printed some forms, and sent me on my way. It felt mechanical, routine, like I was scheduling a dentist appointment. Back home, I began extracting myself from our shared world, one detail at a time. I canceled automatic payments for streaming services and subscriptions that only she used. Turned off reminders for anniversary dates and birthdays I was always the only one to remember. Unlinked my name from the lease renewal. She thought the machine of our life would keep running because it always had. The change in me didn't alarm her. She assumed it was a sulk, a phase, a silent protest that would fade like all the others. She started testing the waters again, small, baited comments meant to draw out a reaction. "You used to make more of an effort," she said one night, flipping through a magazine. I didn't look up from my laptop. "So did you?" A few days later, she came home with takeout from my favorite Thai place. Set the bag on the table without saying much. It was her version of a peace offering, a lazy one, void of any real thought. "You didn't eat yet, right?" she asked casually. "I'm good," I replied, walking past her toward the garage. I had already eaten hours ago. The thing about withholding affection for so long is that when you finally try to offer it again, the recipient might not be hungry anymore. I started spending evenings in the guest room. No conversation, just absence. She noticed. Of course she did. But she said nothing, too proud to admit the shift unnerved her. Instead, she amped up the passive aggression, critiqued my clothes, made sarcastic remarks about how quiet I'd become, asked who I was texting when I wasn't even holding my phone. She thought jealousy might pull me back. It didn't. If anything, it confirmed how performative she had become. One evening, I came home to find her dressed like she was going out, heels, makeup, perfume. She stood by the door, keys in hand. "You're not even going to ask where I'm going?" she said, voice thick with anticipation. "Nope." Her expression faltered. She left without saying goodbye. That was the moment I knew she was starting to feel the edges close in. The following weekend, while she was away visiting her sister, or whoever she was pretending to visit, I packed quietly. Not everything, just the essentials. Enough to start over without making a scene. I didn't leave a note. I simply walked out the same way I had walked in for years, calm, unnoticed. I had already moved most of my clothes to a storage unit over the last 2 weeks. Transferred files, backed up photos, cleared out drawers. All that remained was the physical act of leaving. A formality, really. I moved into a short-term rental across town. Nothing fancy. Just a clean space with quiet walls and no expectations. The first night there, I lay in bed and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. She didn't text right away. Maybe she was trying to play it cool, waiting for me to come crawling back. But by the second day, her tone changed. The first message was short. "Where are you?" Then, "You didn't come home." Then, "Are you okay?" I ignored them all. By the third day, she called. I let it ring. Then came the final text that showed the shift had finally sunk in. "Can we talk?" She still didn't get it. She wanted a conversation to control. A chance to reframe things, soften the truth. But I was done giving her that power. We had talked for years, me with actions, her with avoidance. That conversation had been one-sided the entire time. I went back to the house once, just to collect a few final items. She wasn't there. I moved through each room with detached ease, picking up only what I truly needed. A few books. Some tools. My guitar. I left the mirror on her dresser. The same one I had handed her the night she told me I was one mistake away from being alone. Now she could look at it all she wanted. I agreed to meet her in public. A small cafe near the park, quiet enough for a conversation but neutral enough to remind us both this wasn't about comfort. She picked the spot, probably thinking I'd be more agreeable in a familiar setting. I arrived 10 minutes early, sat by the window, ordered a coffee, and waited. She walked in wearing that same jacket I bought her 2 Christmases ago. The one she pretended not to like, but wore any time she wanted something from me. I noticed her eyes scanning the room, the flicker of uncertainty when she saw I was already seated. She approached slowly, holding her purse like a shield, and took the seat across from me. "I didn't know if you'd show," she said, forcing a small smile. "I did." Silence stretched between us. She looked older, not in the way time does, but in the way life does when it stops going your way. A little less composed. A little more exposed. "You've been ignoring me," she said finally. I nodded. I didn't see anything left to say. Her face twitched, almost like she expected an argument or maybe even a plea. When none came, she leaned in. "Why didn't you tell me you were leaving?" I stirred my coffee. "You already had." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "All those nights you chose your phone over a conversation, your coworkers over me, strangers over honesty. You left a long time ago." I just finally followed. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked down, fidgeting with the edge of a napkin. "I didn't think it was that bad. That's the problem. You stopped noticing." She straightened, trying to reclaim some control. "You never said anything." "I did. Just not in ways you bothered to listen to." Another beat of silence. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. "You said I was one mistake away from being alone," I reminded her. "I handed you a mirror and gave you the truth. You chose to ignore it." Her gaze hardened, but there was something behind it now, panic, maybe, or clarity. "I thought we could fix this." I nodded slowly. "So did I. For years. But you can't fix something you keep pretending isn't broken." She stared at me, her voice quieter. "You used to love me." "I did. And now, I don't love what you became to me." That landed heavier than anything else I'd said. "I miss the way we used to be," she said softly. I leaned back, not unkindly. "So do I. But missing a memory doesn't mean you can survive the present." She didn't respond. Her hands trembled slightly as she sipped from a glass of water she hadn't touched until now. The noise of the cafe faded into the background. All I saw was a woman grasping at what she thought would always be there. "I didn't think you'd really leave," she whispered. "I know. That's why I had to." Her voice broke slightly. "I didn't cheat. I swear. This isn't about proof. This is about how you made me feel. How invisible I became in my own home. How you looked through me instead of at me." She looked down, eyes glassy. "I thought you needed me more than I needed you," she admitted. I nodded again. "You made that clear every time you dismissed me. But that wasn't love. That was leverage." A long pause followed. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Is there someone else?" "No," I said truthfully. "But there will be. Eventually. And whoever she is, she won't have to guess if she matters to me." She wiped under her eye quickly, trying to keep composure. "And me. You'll be fine," I said, not unkindly. "You'll find someone else to fill the silence. But it won't be me. Not anymore." She didn't beg. Maybe she thought there was still time, still a door left open. But I had already walked through it. As I stood to leave, I pulled something from my coat pocket and placed it on the table. It was the mirror. The same one she laughed off months ago, the one that had sat untouched on her dresser. I didn't say anything, just left it there. When I walked out, I didn't look back. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to carry. I went home to a space that didn't smell like tension. A space where I could breathe, make coffee without being ignored, laugh at something stupid without being told I was too sensitive. The texts trickled in over the next week. Some apologetic, some angry, all of them pointless. I didn't respond. Because at the end of it all, I wasn't one mistake away from being alone. I was one truth away from being free. And now, I finally was.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.